As the curtains are about to close on the Natlan chapter in Genshin Impact, I'm feeling just a little bittersweet on the whole thing, mostly because, yes, I am very, very excited to see what is to come in the future of Genshin Impact because, I mean, Nod Cry is right on the horizon. It is just a couple of weeks out. But also, I'm feeling a little sad to say goodbye to Natlan because to me, it feels like it was just a couple of months ago when we first got that first 5.0 update, but really it was a whole year ago. So Natlan just totally sped by. But as we are closing down this chapter, guys, I feel this is a really good time to kind of talk with you guys about the good, the bad, the ugly, my overall thoughts on the Natlan update in Genshin. So let's go ahead and get it. When you first step into Natlan, you are met with a very culturally colorful and aesthetically vibrant land. I mean, the looks of Natlan is nothing like anything that I've seen in any other part of Genshin Impact so far. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air walking into Natlan for sure. You have these really tall cliffs, there's graffiti all over them, and the graffiti is incredibly vibrant in color. I really liked the vibes, especially walking through the Children of Echoes, and everything kind of has a little bit of that yellow tinge to it, kind of that Geo look to it all. You have the Tapetlosaurs, you got the dancing on the stage and everything. It is definitely a lot to take in, and like I said before, it is incredibly different from anything that I have ever seen in any other part of Genshin. And just like any other nation, you run across your first companion in the story for that nation, which is Kachina in the case of Natlan. And Kachina actually is one of my favorite chibi-esque characters. I really like her design. I really like her voice. I really like her attitude and everything. Like, Kachina is awesome. So she shows us around and she takes us across the first landscape of Natlan to the main arena, which is, it's like a thumb sticking out there in the distance. Like, you cannot miss this arena. It is a total statement. It has these towering walls. It has this really high great flame. It is really, really impressive, and it is quite the sight. And yeah, you can see it off in the distance right at the beginning, and I think that was amazing. You knew exactly where you were going right off the bat. I know a lot of people were expecting a very different landscape when entering Natlan. I mean, being the nation of war, of course, you're going to expect these blood-soaked battlegrounds, these desolate areas that are not like graffiti on the wall that's super colorful, these really cheery people that are excited to go to the pilgrimage. It was a shocker for a lot of people. I definitely understand that. For myself, I left it open to interpretation, and I'm not gonna lie, I really like what Genshin did with Natlan. What Genshin Impact did with the 6 different tribes of Natlan, I think is really, really cool, because I thought of each individual tribe as a totally different biome from the next, because each of the tribes were completely different from each other. You have the Children of Echoes, which are more of the rock and geo-oriented tribe that is just solid as a rock. You have the People of the Springs that brings in the Hawaiian vibe. I mean, Kaholasaur is definitely a Hawaiian vibe for sure, and they like to hang out in the hot springs that they have. Then there is the Scions of the Canopy, which live on the side of a cliff. The whole tribe is on the side of a cliff, and these people are really good at traversing the cliff sides and just maneuvering themselves how they need to. Then there's the Collective of Plenty that literally live beneath a volcano, and the Collective of Plenty is a bunch of musclehead luchadors, and probably my favorite tribe, if I'm being completely honest. They are absolutely ridiculous. Then the Flower Feather Clan, which gives you that wild western vibe, and of course the Masters of the Nightwind, which is the shaman tribe that deals a lot more in the supernatural of everything. So for me, the overall vibes of Natlan, I think, definitely hit the mark for sure, and I really enjoyed that it was very, very different from any of the other nations that had come before. The sites were extremely different, and the overall vibes were awesome. The overall exploration in Natlan, I think, was handled extremely well, because when you look at nations like Sumeru, and I know Sumeru is kind of a extreme in this case, but in Sumeru, in the jungles and in the desert, there is a lot of like tunnels, underground areas beneath the map that were locked away from some very, very long quests. And in Natlan, I didn't feel like anything was incredibly out of reach. I felt like everything was fairly obtainable. And yes, there was challenges to get to certain areas, but what's a good game without a few challenges? To me, Natlan had some of the areas that I was the most excited to explore, and those areas are also jutting out from the mainland of Natlan. It is not the main central Natlan, but one of them being Ochka Natlan, which is what I'm pretty sure most of you guys were expecting regular Natlan to look like. It was gray, it was gloomy. As I was exploring, I kind of got a little bit of Dark Soul vibes from it, and it had a story that was so fantastic, so great, that I think it definitely should have been voice acted. This story was deep, and in my opinion, it was a bit of a tearjerker as well. But it was such a cool place, and it just stands tall. You can see it in the distance, and you always know where Ochka Natlan was, and it is definitely one of my favorite places in all of Natlan. And the other place along with Ochka Natlan is, of course, the Sacred Mountain. It is the volcano. I mean, who doesn't want to explore a volcano in a video game? None of you shall say no to that. That was so freaking cool. And then you go inside of the volcano, and there's a whole domain inside the volcano, a whole civilization, an ancient civilization. It was fantastic, and the music was so good. It kind of gave me feels for like the Avengers, like the MCU Avengers. I don't know. That's just kind of me, but the overall domain inside this volcano kept going deeper and deeper and deeper, and it was amazing. I loved every second of it, and it had a great story as well. And to mention the story, both in Ochka Natlan and also in the Sacred Mountain are stories that you take on with the little Tapetlosaur that you pick up at the beginning of Natlan. So it was really cool to kind of get down and just see those huge lore drops on where the little one that you've been having along with you really came from. The one thing that I wish Hoyo did in Genshin's Natlan update for exploration is maybe add even more chests, even more puzzles, because I felt like as each update came out, I was able to 100% them actually fairly easy. So I would love to see them add even more chests, even more puzzles, even more stuff to fill this massive landscape, just to kind of keep us exploration fiends, as I'll call us, because yes, I am definitely one of you guys, keep us really busy and really engaged throughout the entire update. One more thing that I want to add onto the whole exploration thing here in Natlan is map expansions. So let's talk about the map expansions in Natlan. Many times there would be one map expansion, and then you would have to wait 2 whole updates in between the different map expansions. For a exploration fiend like myself, that is incredibly boring. I would be so bored out of my mind in between the different map expansions, because I would 100% them during that map expansion's update, and then I would have the 2 other updates to just kind of cling on to everything that I could, just to kind of keep me interested, keep me going in Genshin Impact. And I'm looking at past updates like Fontaine. I feel like Fontaine did a really good job on consistently putting out map expansions like every other update or so. So something with Natlan is just, I was a little bored in between a few of the different map expansions, and that might just be a me thing, but I don't know if anyone feels the same way. But I would love to see Hoyo kind of return to that more consistent map expansion update type thing. The music in Natlan, I think, was absolutely spot on, and myself as a musician, the music in Genshin is incredibly important. And what I love that Hoyo does is they're able to take these different instruments from the different areas that kind of inspire the nations in Genshin, and they're able to use those instruments in the soundtracks. Like, you go to the Children of Echoes, and you're going to have a very beat-driven song with kind of a wood flute going on there, some xylophones. It's very strong, like rocks. And then you go to the People of the Springs, which is more Polynesian kind of island vibes. And you have something a little bit more quaint, very islander music. You have some guitar in there. You got some very light hits on the cymbals of the drums. And then from there, you go over to the Colosseum, which has these very strong horns, this very empowering kind of sounding music that just makes you feel strong. So the Natlan music, I think Hoyo did a fantastic job on. In Natlan, I feel that Hoyo was a lot more experimental with a few different things, and some of the meat and potatoes of them being experimental is the characters and the character designs in Natlan. And yes, I know it is a pretty controversial topic for some people for sure, but these characters looked nothing like anything that we've seen before. They were bright, they were colorful, they were vivid, and they brought in some mechanics that allowed them to traverse the landscape of Natlan with ease. You have Kniech that brings in a lot of greens and a lot of yellows into his color scheme, and he matches that color scheme of a How as well, obviously. But his big thing is he can grab these rappel points in the sky that you either put there or are already existing, and he can just like slingshot himself through the sky, just like the Yumkasaurs, because he's from the Scions of the Canopy. And then you have Chaska that totally fits the Wild Western vibe with the hat, the clothes, and everything. And on top of that, she rides like a Kukasaur through the air on a giant hand cannon of all things. It is absolutely crazy. And then you have Veressa, which is a girl with kind of cow or bull features that runs just like Sonic the Hedgehog himself, or a cartoon character, just like a Tatankasaur, and is able to kind of bowl her way through everything. And also she is a total foodie and loves food. Veressa is definitely my favorite character in all of Natlan, but she brings in a color palette of pinks and blues. And then, of course, down to the Pyro Archon herself, Mavwika, who is in a fully black leathered suit and rides a motorcycle and does a little bit of everything from all the different tribes. And I know Mavwika was definitely a big controversy point for a lot of people, because people felt that she should have looked a little bit different than the black leather suit. But in all honesty, if she's riding a motorcycle, to me personally, it makes sense. And I love that her hair is just this really bright, vivid red with little yellow features in there. Now, it took me just a little bit of time to kind of grasp onto the idea of the newer character designs in Natlan, because yes, they are extremely different from anything that we've seen before, but I really started to enjoy them as the Natlan update continued through Genshin Impact. And I will say now, a lot of the Natlan characters are actually some of my favorite characters in the game. And it just goes to show that Hoyo is willing to try all these different things to keep the game nice and fresh, because yeah, Natlan was a breath of fresh air, at least aesthetically wise and mechanic wise for sure, especially with the characters. Let's talk about the Saurians a little bit, because there's a good side to them and then there's a not so great side to them in my own opinion. So the Saurians were really cool because there was one for each of the 6 tribes. There was the Tapetlasaur for the Children of Echoes that could go underground, he could climb up walls and everything. There was the Yumkasaur that could kind of grab those traverse points and slingshot themselves through the air just like Kniech. There was the Kukasaur that you could like fly through the air as long as you had the phlogiston for it. And each of the Saurians could do basically what the new characters in Natlan were coming out and doing with their new mechanics. And the downside to the Saurians that I was finding was that a lot of them just kind of felt really clunky and kind of slow, and it almost made me feel like I would rather just go out and get the new character, because the characters were a lot more easier to maneuver around the world than the big clunky Saurian or the big clunky Tatankasaur that just could not run very fast when it didn't have the phlogiston that it needed. So there is a good side to it, because I do like the idea of the Saurians, but for them, maneuverability really wasn't that great, and it just felt better just to get the character instead. Overall, I feel that the bosses in Natlan were done really, really well. I mean, you have the Mountain King, which is this oversized Yumkasaur. He puts out the 3 different fruits, and then you have to light them on fire and they'll blow up on him. I thought that was kind of a fun little mechanic there. And then there is the giant angry Kukasaur, and he would turn this ball of energy, be flying around up in the air, and you'd have to use something like Hydro to get him down from there. So I thought those bosses were really, really great. And then it got to the secret source bosses, which I felt weren't quite as unique because we've had kind of those secret source type bosses before. And it's like, okay, what does this one do? He makes pillars and you have to use Shilonin or Kachina to go up the side of them and hit the little beacons on the top. Or what does this one do? Oh, he turns around and goes into a sprinkler mode, starts doing this little circular thing. So the secret source bosses probably weren't my favorite, but the other bosses I think were done really well. And there was also the Papilla boss as well, this ball of abyssal energy, this ball of hatred that could turn into any boss in the overworld. And I think that was probably my favorite boss in all of Natlan. I think that was really, really cool. But he does go into this shield mode with this abyssal shield, and I find that Chaska and Kanich are the best for taking down the shield, and it's a really slow grind with any other character to really get the shield down. But it was a really, really cool boss. Along with all of the character ascension bosses that I just mentioned, there was also a ton of local legends. Like, Hoyo went crazy in Natlan with the local legends. I never thought I would be cursing at a penguin and a goat so much, or even a guy dressed up in a cactus outfit. Like, the local legends were no joke in Natlan, and I think they did such a great job. And some of those local legends had different mechanics. Like, there was one that was near the Flower Feather clan, and if you get enough charges on it, it will multiply your damage, and you can get some of the biggest nuke damage with Mavwika. It was absolutely insane. And then of course there was the It Never Dies Capybara little spirit thing. Yeah, that was a crazy local legend as well. I know everyone else knows about that one. It was insane. There was one boss fight that I felt could have been handled a lot better in Natlan, and that was the Bakanawa fight. So the Bakanawa is this immortal beast that is hanging out in the Mare Javari, and we have been hearing about the Mare Javari since the beginning of the game, since Venti's story quest. And you go in then here, and it is the largest boss in the game. This thing is absolutely massive, but it is definitely a gimmick fight, and I could literally beat it just by standing in the same place. Like, I didn't even have to move. All I had to do was just hit the button at the right time, and I would have been able to really defeat it. But I kind of wish that there was more incentive to run up and hit them with different attacks and stuff like that, not just kind of rely on the quick time events of the mechanics for the Bakanawa. So that's something that I kind of wish was dealt with a little bit better, because you hear about the Bakanawa since the beginning of the game, since Dragon Spine and Venti's story quest with the Mare Javari. So it wasn't really what I expected of it to be. So I'm hoping that other areas of the Mare Javari, that they're able to handle that one a little bit better and make it seem a little bit more immersive, to where it's like, yeah, I'm dealing this damage. It's not just the mechanic. For the most part, I felt that the Archon quests in Natlan were handled pretty well, and they were fairly solid on story as well. But there was just a little bit of something with like a disconnection in between the different chapters that seemed to kind of get me, where it's like Act 1, 2, and 3 didn't feel too connected to me. Like Act 1, you go to the Colosseum with Kachina and you watch the pilgrimage, and then Act 2, you're saving Kachina from the Night Kingdom, and then Act 3, you're tracking down Auroron and the captain, and it just didn't really feel like there was that great of a transition in between them. And for Natlan being the Nation of War, I didn't really feel the urgency of war until Act 4, where you start getting all of these abyssal attacks all over Natlan, and then all of a sudden you're watching this body count just like skyrocket through the sky. You're seeing bodies on the ground of Saurians, of tribesmen. It is absolutely insane, and that is really where the Natlan Archon quest really starts to pick up for me, is in Act 4. And there are only 5 different acts in all of Natlan's Archon quest. But yeah, Act 4 is definitely where things really started to pick up for me. And then in Act 5, you're stuck picking up the pieces from the war in Act 4, and then you have this epic conclusion in the Night Kingdom with Mavwika against Gasoithoth, and that is amazing. That is absolute cinema right there. And then after that, there is just these massive lore drops after lore drops, just insane. Of course, how am I even going to mention the Archon quest without talking about the Fatui Harbinger that we have in Natlan currently, the captain? And I think, like many of you guys from watching the trailers and whatnot, that we thought the captain was going to be one of the big baddies, one of the big enemies that we were really going to have to fight in Natlan. And yes, there was a little bit of a scuffle between him and Mavwika at the beginning of the quest, but for the most part, pretty early on, he actually ended up joining our side and helping us tame the Abyss in Natlan. And I'm really not sure if the Natlan crew would have been able to pull it out if it hadn't been for the captain and his forces. So I really like that, because we always think of the Fatui Harbingers as this opposing force, this dark side to the good side. And it's not always the case. There's kind of this gray area, and the captain definitely was riding that gray area for sure, but ended up helping us out. And I thought that was a really cool part of this whole Archon quest. Throughout the Natlan update in Genshin, there was one thing that kind of plagued me, and I'm sure it plagued a lot of you guys as well, and that was that some of the voices of our favorite characters were missing. There was a voice act strike that was going on, and it was really affecting Genshin and a few of the other games in the realm of Genshin. But as someone that is playing on English dub, where I don't have to read everything, it definitely affected me. That's for sure. And it didn't feel quite as immersive having, a voice, and then all of a sudden the next person talks and there's no voice, and then there's a voice again, and then there's no voice. So that was kind of a huge bummer, but luckily I think everything is kind of getting figured out, and it looks like a very bright future down the road for the voices of our favorite characters. And I don't want to get too far into it, but I just wanted to mention that that was one of the things that was a little bit of a bummer in my opinion, especially as I was going through the Archon quest. I felt that the story quests for all the new characters coming out in the Natlan update were handled extremely well. I actually really liked what Genshin did this update, and that is basically they turned all the story quests from our favorite 5 stars coming out, and they made it into the tribal chronicled quests. So for those of you guys that don't know about the story quests, basically you go into this menu, you have these keys that you get from doing your daily commissions, and you can unlock certain quests. But you have to go into this menu to be able to unlock the quests. And with the Tribal Chronicles, you go up to the obsidian pillar in the middle of whatever tribe that you're going for, and there is a quest that you can do that is hooked to your reputation rewards. And this quest eventually turns into the what would be story quest for that 5 star or that 4 star, and it just felt so incredibly fluid to me, and I felt so much more incentive to do these quests rather than go into the menu and unlock a story quest. I think the Tribal Chronicle quest is something that I would love to see done this way in any future updates in Genshin. I think it was fantastic, and each of the quests, it just felt like a whole new story within a story. It was incredible. It was really, really good what they did. I know a lot of us that are playing Genshin really, really look forward to the summertime events that come with each patch. And this year's summer event, the Easy Breeze Resort, was absolutely amazing. It was by far the best summer event that we have had to date. And the one that I liked before this one was Bottle Land, the one with the roller coaster and everything. but this one definitely knocked it out of the park. And one of the things that just really made it stand out to me is that usually during our summertime events, the map expansion that comes along with it disappears and gets erased from time after that update. But the Easy Breeze Resort is here to stay. We get to keep this map expansion, which is absolutely amazing. The Easy Breeze Resort brought in some of the best island vibes and Hawaiian vibes that I loved from the people of the Springs and just expanded upon it. And the Asha that you get to run around with are absolutely ridiculous. They are hilarious and quirky, and you can literally paint and color just about anything on this resort island. I loved the vibes on the Easy Breeze Resort. This summer event was so fantastic, and the story that came along with it was amazing as well. I mean, and it really was able to link Bennett to Natlan that we have been kind of speculating and saying for the longest time, but no, it's a reality now. It is certainly a reality. The mini games that came with the summertime event were fantastic this year. I liked every single one of them. There was, the gunslinger one where you can shoot all the cactus guys. There was the side scroller that was a lot of fun as well. And then, of course, there was the co-op painting one that you could do with all your friends. And that one was absolutely ridiculous. But they really pulled out all the stops for this year's summer event. And Hoyo, I hope you guys understand this, but there is literally no going back from this. Like from now on, from here forward, any summertime event is going to have to be as good as this or even better. And I hope it's even better. I cannot wait to see what they do for the next one. And that is my thoughts on the Natlan update in Genshin Impact. There was a lot going on in this update, and it was just jam-packed with a lot of stuff. But of course, with as many highs as it had, there were a few little rocky areas that I hope gets better in the future. But with Nod Cry on the horizon, I am super, super stoked to see what Hoyo has planned for us. And just from looking at the trailers, it looks absolutely amazing. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Also, if you want to catch our Twitch streams, you can find me at twitch.tv/VoodooPlayGaming. Come by, we're always having an amazing time on there, and I will see you guys in the next one.